Hi guys. I apologize for being a little bit late tonight. I thought I had everything set up properly and then it doesn't appear that everything is set up properly. So here I am. Thank you for being here with me. All right. So tonight I wanted to share with you some information that I've learned around the 4 big blocks or the major blocks. These are inner blocks. So let's take it from the top. What's a block? A block is exactly what it sounds like. Something that's blocking and getting in the way of you making the progress that you want to make in any aspect of your life. It can be in relationships, it can be at work, it can be personal, it can be spiritual, it can be anything that's keeping you from getting where you want to be, and you may or may not have a clear understanding of why that's happening. So I was trained on the information that I'm going to share with you while attending my life coach training, and the school that I chose believes that they're teaching you how, they're not just teaching you how to coach, they're teaching you how to be a coach. And that means that you're living the principles and that you're walking the talk. And although these concepts are relatively simple, they're almost never easy to employ for anyone, including me. And so please know that the information that I'm sharing with you tonight or at any time is knowledge that helps me be a coach, not just knowledge that helps me act like a coach. These are things that I'm learning. These are things that I'm working on. These are the same things that block me. Okay? I am not exempt to these in any way, shape, or form. I mean, what do they say? Those who can't do, teach. It does help me to learn more deeply when I share the information that I have. So, let's get on with it. Let's talk the blocks. So there are 2 types of blocks that you're going to encounter. There's the outer blocks and then the inner blocks. And those are the ones we're going to focus on today. But to understand those, we need to kind of understand the difference between the 2. So outer blocks originate from outside of us, outside of our mind. Inner blocks come from within our mind. So I'd like to set up a scenario that I can use as an example through each of the internal blocks as we go through it, because I think it'll help me explain things more concisely. I don't think anybody who knows me knows that that I'm naturally concise, so you can thank me for that later. So imagine for me now that you're considering moving to another city, but you're finding it really difficult to sort through your thoughts and your values, the pros and cons, and other people's opinions in order to come to your final decision. You're unable to do whatever it takes to come to a final decision. You're being blocked. Outer blocks that might come up around this situation could be your financial, how your financial situation plays into effect. Can you afford the cost of living? Can you afford to stay where you are? And what does that look like? Can you physically make the move? Can your family and yourself physically do this? Is someone ill or has trouble with the move? Maybe your spouse or children don't want to go. Then what? You might end up closer to family or further away from family, and both of those things have pluses and minuses. This is not an exhaustive list. Each person is unique to their situation, and their outer blocks are dependent completely on aspects of their own physical being and life. So what's true for me as a physical block isn't necessarily true for you as a physical block. or outer blocks, sorry. Outer blocks are completely legitimate, and they definitely need to be tackled if progress is going to happen towards your goal. But oftentimes they're simpler to identify and easier to create action plans around than internal blocks. And that's why we're all here. So let's get started talking about those. The first one I wanted to bring up is called limiting beliefs. Basically, a limiting belief block keeps you from taking action because you believe you don't have a right to make that decision, you shouldn't be making a decision, or it's never going to work because whatever. How that might look in relation to our scenario of moving might be like, single women don't just pick up and move to a new city. They just don't. Or it's not right to uproot your whole family when your kids are still in grade school. People who live in this or that city are shallow, have low morals, they're too rich, they're too poor, can't be happy here, can't be happy there, right? Like, you have this belief that affects your decision-making process. Like, there's no jobs available for people in my profession here or there. This time of the year isn't a good time to move because whatever that looks like for you. And listening to those kinds of statements, that kind of self-talk, you can hear the judgment around the thoughts. And the tricky part of all of that is that we really believe these things, right? If we didn't, they wouldn't be blocking us. Somewhere along the way in our lives, we chose to believe these ideas because it was serving us in some way. But now, in this time and place in our life, they're blocking us, and we want to figure out how we can get around them in the easiest way possible, right? So how can we do that? Questions. Questions are how we're going to navigate our way through these blocks. And you could ask yourself something like, okay, well, why don't single women just pick up and move? Why? Challenge it, right? What's not right about moving school-aged kids? What proof do I have that people in this place or that place are this way or that way? What exactly about moving at this time of the year makes it impossible for me to go or stay? When we're able to ask ourselves questions like that and challenge where we're coming from, we learn about ourselves, the way that we respond. And if you take time to really listen to the answer and not just ask yourself that and then go on, like, oh God, why isn't that okay? And then you just, go ahead and start wiping counters or, get back to emails, whatever it is you were working on, but really answer yourself. You'll be able to learn. You'll be able to go, oh gosh, I think I recognize where that came from. And that can feel really powerful. When we get there, that block is removed. And then we sort of can look at things through a fresh lens. So let's move on to assumptions. So block number 2. Assumptions sound something like this. Ooh, you already tried this, remember, and it didn't work. So it's not going to work now. It's not going to work later. You know what? It's never going to work for you. You are you, and because because of that, it's never going to work for you. And the thoughts around our scenario might be something like, well, you can't move or stay because the last time was a disaster. Don't you remember that? The kids have a hard time adjusting to a new teacher. Imagine what this would do to them. Or, I haven't met a single person from here or there who shares my personal values, and I won't fit in there or here. Or I've been turned down for 3 jobs already. I'll never find one here or there. These assumptions that because something has taken place a certain way in the past, it's just obviously and naturally going to happen that way now, is completely false. And we need to be prepared to let go of that polarized thinking, that all or nothing, always, never, kind of black and white thinking, because that's the block. Let's ask ourselves questions like, so what's different about this scenario than that scenario in the past? Or how am I different now at this time and place in my life than I was as compared to the last time this disastrous thing occurred? Or what might I do differently from times past to generate a different outcome? This is probably a good time to mention that both limiting beliefs and assumptions have kept me from pursuing a lot. Great ideas, fun opportunities. They've even tripped me up along the journey that's brought me here with you now. These two blocks for me like flick on as quick and easily as a light switch for me, and I have to be very cognizant of when the switch gets flicked so that I don't get caught up being blocked. So our third block is interpretations. And interpretations are exactly that. They're your perception of a situation. Again, back to our example of moving or not moving. Well, my mom thinks that I'm foolish for even considering it. She won't even talk to me about it. Or it's not worth it to pack up and move to another city. Or I'm only considering it because my boss doesn't even like me. Nobody ever likes me. Humans are very, very proficient at the subjective awareness game because it helps us feel safe. And it also sometimes can help us shift some of the onus onto others. We'll feel more justified or comfortable believing that it's out of our hands, so to speak, right? Oh, well, my mom thinks it's a bad idea and I don't want to upset her. Or my coworkers don't like me, I can't stay. Things like that. So how we can come at this in a productive way would be with questions like, why exactly doesn't my mom talk to me about this topic? I think it's because she thinks it's a bad idea, but I've never asked, right? I sort of just interpreted her avoidance of the topic to mean that she didn't think it was a good idea. What part of moving isn't worth it? How do I know that my boss doesn't like me or my coworkers don't like me coming into work? Basically, you're looking for proof. What proof do I have that, right, that my interpretation is accurate? Answering these questions super honestly and taking the action needed to get the clarification will eliminate this block. So quickly, you'll be like, oh, you mean my mom is sad that I'm considering moving to a city away from her? And that's why she doesn't want to talk to it? Okay, well, there's a new spin on it, right? It helps us see things in a much more objective way. Interpretations used to get the better of me because it's, for me, easier to believe the worst about myself. And because I'm me, it just happens to be less work for me to recognize when I'm making an interpretation than it is for me the other blocks. So maybe this is the one that's more difficult for you, and that's totally fine. I'm going to be me and you're going to be you, and we'll both be awesome at it. So I saved the heavy hitter for last. This is kind of the big daddy of all the inner blocks for me, and it's called self-sabotage, right? Ugh, gets ya. Right there, you're like, oh no, don't bring it up. Don't bring this up. Let's not talk about it. Let's pretend this doesn't exist, but I can't because it's blocking me. It's blocking most everybody I've ever talked to. It can be very difficult to overcome because it's usually very deep-seated and has been around a really long time. And it sounds like this. I'm not exactly sure who you think you are, but you can't pull this off. Like, I mean, you know what? Try. But when you fail, I'll be here for you, babe. I got you back, right? We all talk to ourselves this way. Maybe she's not that snotty. Maybe she's worse. I don't know. But we all talk to ourselves like this. Totally human, totally normal. My self-saboteur is a pro. Now, I want to just throw in my perspective here. That voice, that saboteur voice, is what I call ego. I know a lot of people don't, or mainstream culture doesn't connect those two. I don't mean ego like macho, hey, everybody should look at me, right? Like that's self-centered and, you know, just being a show-off or whatever that is. But ego is a thing. Ego is the part of me that believes it is me. Does that make any sense at all? That voice in there that tells me, you know, I can't do the things I want to do, tells me those things because it thinks it is me, right? But I know that it can't be me because I can hear it, I can observe it, I can interact with it. It is not who I am. It's a part of me. The way that I have hair growing out of my head and 10 fingers and I'm a certain height. It's a part of who I am. It's the part of all of us that resists change. The ego, the self-saboteur, is the part that loves lounging in the comfort zone, where nothing new or challenging or scary is likely to happen. Ego is your protector, and it resides in this fear-based place of better safe than sorry, and will hold no punches if it feels like its and your safety are being compromised. And the harder you push, the harder it pushes back. And that's why it can be so very difficult for us to deal with. And oftentimes we just pick our battles. We're not going head to head with this thing most of the time. So come back to our scenario here about moving. I know that kind of went a little sideways there for a sec, but coming back to the scenario of moving, your saboteur might say something like, seriously, moving? What are you even going to accomplish anyway? Or, this is a selfish move. Why don't you think about your family's needs before your own? From the other side of the coin, you know what? You should hurry up and get there. Start your new job before they realize that you're not actually qualified. Right? This thing will come at you from every angle possible to keep you from being uncomfortable. So now what? Right? It is rarely enjoyable and easy work facing your self-saboteur ego, because we believe, most people believe, it's our who. They think that voice is who we are. We believe that it knows us. I mean, I don't remember a time without it. And we put faith and trust in that voice, the way that we would put faith and trust in anybody who's been with us as long as we can remember, and knows us the way we believe our ego knows us. So I'm going to sideline here a little bit more. Before we talk about how to handle the self-saboteur, let's expand on the concept of why it's here and how it works. So consider for a second that the beliefs that you hold today and right now are your choice. Now, before we get excited, undoubtedly, some of our beliefs were planted there, coerced, and even nurtured for and by others. But knowingly or not, we made the choice to believe it then and continue believing it now in a way that affects us as a hindrance. So, not all of our beliefs do that. For example, I agree to be called Melissa. I believe to agree that the color of the sky is blue. I agree to believe that that my body is considered to be female. But also, I chose to believe more complex and deeper things, like life is harder for working mothers than working fathers. I'm supposed to hate my ex-husband. I should put my child's needs before my own. It's wrong for me to love my husband more than I love my children. I'm not a very good mother, and my kids only love me by default. So you can see how these ideas that we choose to believe can be very trivial and also be very powerful. Now, not everything I listed there was necessarily my saboteur, my self-sabotaging voice, my ego voice, because there were other blocks apparent there too. But those are just examples of things that I agreed to believe. Take that idea, come back to how to handle your self-saboteur voice and your ego voice. Remember that it can only tell you things that you agreed to believe. Okay? Your gross saboteur voice is not going to tell you something you don't already believe. And you are personally responsible for keeping that thing fed and watered. That can be really uncomfortable for a lot of people. That was not a pill I wanted to swallow for a long time. We all have stuff in our past that brought us to where we are today, and I was very comfortable thinking that a lot of the ideas that hold me back and a lot of things that this voice tells me were implanted by someone beyond my control, and that I couldn't forget it if I wanted to, and that I was governed by these thoughts. No longer the case, right? This is not an easy to digest meal. So if you need some more time with it, take some time with it. you're asking maybe, how can I possibly come up against this entity, right? I mean, I'll admit I made it sound pretty scary. And again, this is one of those simple but not easy things because it's kind of counterintuitive. And the answer is compassion. And your self-talk in response might sound something like, whoa, I am so scared of staying in this city. What is that all about? Or, oh God, no wonder I didn't want to go. It makes perfect sense why I'm feeling in turmoil over this. Or, I believe you, inner self, ego. I believe it when you tell me that this situation is going to be gross. It's going to be difficult in any number of ways. But I can handle it. Thank you for caring about me. Thank you for looking out for me and trying to keep me safe, but I got this. I do. Some of you may be shaking your heads at how silly that sounds, but self-compassion and actual self-compassionate verbiage impacts you, your heart and your mind and the way that you think about things. And if you're skeptical about it, just try it on for size. Do an experiment. Just say the same nice thing to yourself morning, noon, and night for a week. And we'll just see where it goes. I would love to hear how that goes for you. Back to the ego. So this voice, ego, self-saboteur, it affects our choices in the physical world, but it's actually rooted in our emotions. So if you're willing to try to relax and listen to the message it's giving you without stuffing it down or ignoring it. So listen for it. Acknowledge that its message could hold value in a way that can help you fight the block. Then you can consciously and confidently take responsibility into your own hands and say, hey, you've been doing a good job holding down the fort here, but with some self-examination, I know that I don't need to hold on to this fear. I don't need to hear these messages from you. I got this. And that can feel awesomely scary and freaking downright frightening all at the same time. Right? Okay, that's it for the blocks. And I know how complex and multifaceted these blocks are. And I'm really hoping that my overview offered you more insight than confusion. I mean, I believe that awareness is the primary tool for personal growth and self-mastery. So I like to keep my little imaginary flashlight in my little imaginary pocket, and I pull it out when I'm feeling gross or bad or you know, the feeling that doesn't have a name because it's all the bad feelings. And I'll take that flashlight and I'll shine it on my response to the situation that's going on. I don't shine it at the situation. I shine it on my response to the situation in order to gain some awareness as to what part of me is not okay with this situation and how can I reconcile that. Because if we're going to live our whole lives and keep our head on straight, we cannot try and control every situation that's out there. We're going to have to start here and go, this is what I can control. I'm going to make some effort to understand myself and why I do the things that I do and what's been inhibiting me in the past and what motivates me in the past and how I'm going to use that moving forward. So awareness allows us to be really honest with ourselves. And when we're ready, it's different timing for everyone, we can move forward in new ways that will create new outcomes. Okay, so again, a simplified overview of the concepts. But employing these concepts takes practice, patience, and time. And if you find yourself unable to pinpoint something that's happening for you, take a breath and just back off a little bit, right? Like, don't kick a dead horse. If it's not coming to you, it's not coming to you. Just back off and let it come to you, right? Be a cat, not a dog. There may also be times when you feel like you need help to go through the process of sorting this kind of stuff out. And that's exactly what I'm trained for and skilled at doing. So please, please, please contact me and we'll just talk about it. I want to let you all know that I'll be offering this seminar again in December. So watch for the date and invite your friends. It will also be free of charge. Please invite your friends. Please tell people. It's not nearly as fun for me to sit here and chat like this, knowing that there's no one out there. So tell a friend, tell a coworker, tell the person in front of you at the grocery store checkout line, just so that I'm not like hanging out alone in the cloud up here. For those of you who would also like to go deeper into each of these concepts with me in a small private group, I'm going to be running a more in-depth 4-week course in January. So stay tuned to your email inbox and my social media for the details on that. And because I think it needs to be said twice, if this resonates with you and you'd like to have a conversation about it with me, call me. Okay? Message me. Do whatever you need to do to get in contact with me. There will never be any judgment or obligation to meet with me ever again after that. I'm so cool that way. So, until we meet again, let's be honest and kind.